The Nintendo Switch.
Let's have a little chat about it, shall we?
It's pretty hard to put into words just how successful the Nintendo Switch has been. This is the console that had the unfortunate task of being the successor to the Wii U. Sorry about that, guys. I've just discovered that whenever I put a Wii U on this screen, it's followed by a horrific shriek. Even in post-editing, I can't seem to make it stop. See? So I'm gonna try to limit putting the Wii U on the screen for the rest of this video, just for your viewing pleasure, but there will be some instances where it is unavoidable, so apologies about that. Not only did the Switch have to be an amazing console in its own right, but it also had the massive task of rebuilding Nintendo's brand as a home console manufacturer. Whilst it might not seem like the case today, back in 2017, a lot of people were concerned with the direction in which Nintendo was heading. Nintendo was coming into this next generation with a lot to prove, but against all odds, the Nintendo Switch delivered, solidifying its place as one of the most beloved and influential gaming consoles in history. But instead of looking back at the Switch's success to date, I thought it would be cool to look ahead. That's why in today's video, we are going to try and answer this one simple question. What will the Nintendo Switch be like in 20 years? Now, there's a lot to talk about here, so I'm going to break this down into different sections, starting with... And the reason we're starting with hardware durability is pretty straightforward. What's the point of talking about anything else if the Switch itself is not capable of even lasting 20 years? Luckily for the Switch, I think it'll be just fine. The build quality on the Nintendo Switch console is amazing, and I have no doubts that it will hold up even in 20 years' time. I know people who have owned the same Switch console since launch, and have poured thousands of hours into gaming on it, and have had no major hardware degradation at all. And that's pretty damn impressive. I don't think there's a lot of other consoles out there that can really say that. And yes, I know, the Joy-Cons do not have great durability. The infamous Joy-Con stick drift is a thing. However, I don't think it'll have as big of an impact as some of you may think. And that's because whilst, yes, it's inevitable that pretty much every Joy-Con in 20 years' time will have some form of Joy-Con drift, it's a completely fixable issue. In the same way that Nintendo 64 controller joysticks can be replaced, I'm pretty confident that people will start making replacement Joy-Con sticks in the future in exactly the same fashion as they have with Nintendo's other retro consoles. So whilst the durability of the Joy-Cons will be highly questionable, I don't think it's going to be as much of a barrier to play the Nintendo Switch in 20 years' time as a lot of people may think. So with that out of the way, let's move on to... So yeah, there are a lot of Nintendo Switches out there, which I think is a great thing for the long-term success of the console. As of the 31st of December 2023, Nintendo has sold over 139 million Nintendo Switches. And what this means is that they're gonna be readily available for a long time, which I think will be one of the key drivers to the Nintendo Switch being an amazing retro console in 20 years. The availability of the console will ensure that anyone who wants a Switch in 20 years' time should hopefully be able to get one at a reasonably affordable price. And that's a lot more than can be said for some of Nintendo's current retro consoles, such as the GameCube and even the Wii U, which isn't as old but is severely limited by the minimal amount of consoles that were actually even produced. So now that we've concluded that the Nintendo Switch has the hardware durability and availability to be around in 20 years' time, let's look at the most important thing of all, When you look at the classic retro consoles of today, one of the biggest things that drives their popularity is the games that they can play. People want to buy an NES to play Super Mario Bros, just like people want a Nintendo 64 to play Super Mario 64. So for the Nintendo Switch to be an amazing retro console in 20 years time, it needs to have games that people want to go back to. And without a doubt, the Nintendo Switch has access to one of the most amazing game libraries of all time. It's got games like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, the first fully open world Zelda game ever, and its sequel, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which builds upon and expands this formula. It's got one of the most highly acclaimed 3D Mario games of all time with Super Mario Odyssey. And it's got Metroid Dread, which was the first 2D Metroid game since Metroid Fusion, which released all the way back in 2002. Alongside this, there's a bunch of other amazing games such as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and a myriad of other amazing titles. One thing I will note is that in 20 years time, it's highly unlikely that the Nintendo Switch's online services will still be available, so many of the games that rely on their multiplayer functionality, such as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, will not be as playable as they are today. But nonetheless, I think it's fair to say that most of the staple games in the Nintendo Switch's library do not rely on multiplayer functionality. These system-defining titles are not the only reason people are going to be wanting to play a Nintendo Switch in 20 years' time. I think that one of the most amazing things about the Nintendo Switch's library is how many ports and remasters it has. And I know that a lot of people out there may view that as a negative thing, but I think for the sake of game preservation, these titles are extremely important. As I mentioned earlier in this video, there were not a lot of Wii U's produced, so in 20 years time, I'd imagine it would be a lot more difficult for someone to find a Wii U and to play its games. Luckily for them though, a lot of the Wii U's defining games were brought over to the Nintendo Switch. So if someone out there wanted to play New Super Mario Bros. U, Pikmin 3, Super Mario 3D World, or games like Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, they would be able to do so on the Nintendo Switch. And as well as this, in 20 years time, Nintendo's older consoles such as the Nintendo 64 and the GameCube will be over 40 years old, and their consoles such as the Wii will be almost 40 years old, which I imagine will severely limit their availability. So the fact that the Switch has access to a lot of quality ports from these older consoles as well is an amazing feature that I think will make the console highly desirable in 20 years time. There's games such as Super Mario 3D All-Stars, which will allow Switch owners access to Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, and Super Mario Galaxy. As well as this, there's other games such as The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX, The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, Metroid Prime Remastered, Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, and Pikmin 1 and 2. And these are all games that I think people who are fans of Nintendo's older consoles will desperately want to be playing in 20 years time. And luckily for them, if the GameCube, the Wii, or the Nintendo 64 are exceedingly rare to come across, the Nintendo Switch will be able to deliver. So yeah, based on these factors, I think the Nintendo Switch is primed to be an amazing retro gaming console in 20 years time. Obviously, this is all speculation, so I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments down below. Do you guys agree with what I had to say, or do you think I'm a dum-dum? Let me know. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video, feel free to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you did enjoy this video, feel free to check out one of the other videos on the screen right now. I do put a lot of time into these, so any support is greatly appreciated. Anyways, I will see you guys next time.